I think as marketers, we continue to ignore that flat tire. And for me, the flat tire in case of marketing is what I call marketing fragmentation, which is very chaotic, very complex and pervasive at the same time in the world of marketing. And if you take a step back and look at, from a bird's eye view, we've totally broken down marketing. And by the way, just like the driver there, we're celebrating that fragmentation. We're celebrating those silos. So if you look at marketing, we've broken it down into digital marketing, content marketing, agile, mobile, email. It's massively broken, and we're excited about it. We've totally nailed it, right? And if you take a step back and you look at what we're really doing is we're massively becoming channel obsessed instead of becoming consumer centric. And when you do that, at best as brands, you'll end up driving experiences that are multi-channel and not omni-channel. And it doesn't end there. You actually then look at the second level of fragmentation, that what I call organizational and operational fragmentation. And by the way, it's no longer just restricted to marketing and technology, right? It's across the spectrum. It's fragmentation across marketing, sales, finance, and technology. And the end result of that, again, is a massively broken experience, which is hardly connected or omni-channel.
Right. So Mayur, you guys are what, 21 billion odd in revenues these days?
Yes, and getting up every single second.
So are you seeing some of these fragmentation problems?
We absolutely are. But if you go to the next slide, Sheldon, the way I say is we are in the journey right now where we are gradually moving from a state of being unconsciously incompetent to becoming consciously incompetent, which by the way is a step closer to becoming consciously competent, hopefully very soon. But I think as an organization, and I'm very fortunate to be in it, we massively believe in organizational convergence because we know that our consumers are engaging with our brand at those intersection points, which is not just in a silo. These are intersection points that go across marketing, sales, finance, and so on. So if you want to engage the consumer and inspire consumer behavior, you really got to drive that at the intersection points that goes across the board. And that's why, if you actually show the next slide, we've really put consumer right at the center, not just within marketing, but right at the center of the organization, where it's not just marketing's prerogative to drive consumer experiences and engagement, but pretty much across the board. And this is the state that I call being consumer obsessed, and not channel obsessed.
So, Mayur, all of this sounds really good conceptually, but how is that manifesting in reality within your organization? What are you doing personally to drive some of this this convergence, if you will?
So, in my world of marketing, technology, and innovation, I use a very simple example. I look at ourselves as marketers as people who have these dreams to have beautiful houses, right? So just like a beautiful house or your dream house, that has many floors and rooms, but at the end of it, what turns the light on is the wiring that goes across those rooms and across the floors. I look at our desire and dream to drive these ultimate experiences for our consumers very similar way, and I look at data and technology as the wiring that stitches and connects the consumer journey across across touch points, across channels, across devices. So they play a massive role, and that's what I see as my role as well. And actually, if you look at this infographic sort of, which is the Gartner Transit Map, I think they released it sometime last year. And by the way, this is one of many out there. If you look at it, it's not simple at all. In fact, it's rather complex and chaotic. And if you look at what's happening there, it's a plethora of technologies. I think in the last one from Scott Brinker, it's had 1,000 different types of technologies that are out there influencing marketing. And what's happening in the industry is everyone's running at 200 miles an hour trying to pick up these technologies and build them and deploy them in isolation. I think the bigger challenge and the linchpin underneath is how well these technologies are really connecting with each other. How are you really taking the data and converging it, just like in the previous session? How are you looking at the first party, second party, and third party data, bringing it all together? And I think that's the massive opportunity and the bigger challenge at the same time as well.
Yeah. But from a fragmentation standpoint, going back to the F1 analogy, so you're kind of the race car driver, and fragmentation is your flat tire, right? So how do you deal with that? It
is, and I've come to believe, and I think there's this guy that I'm sure you would love to talk about, but I honestly believe that fragmentation has now become a natural response to scale, right? And I know this, I don't know, Sheldon, if you want to talk about this guy. I know we were joking about it the other day.
Yeah, I was telling Mayur that you know, Daniel McCallum is the reason he hates his job.
Well, I don't hate it. This is all love, by the way.
So Daniel McCallum, right, he's a railroad engineer, and kind of he was the inventor of the first organizational chart. What he noticed is that railroads that were longer than 50 miles in length were less profitable than railroads that were shorter than 50 miles in length. So, you know, he invented, basically, he said, put a manager in charge of each one of these segments, put a middle management on top of them, and there you have modern management. But, you know, while that helped the railroad to scale, it's caused this problem of fragmentation, because we organize around internal complexity versus, you know, creating a seamless customer experience.
And I think that's spot on. That's why I get so aligned with that thinking. And ultimately, I think we all used to responding to scale with massive levels of fragmentation. And you know what's ironic is, I'm sure all of us here get inspired by new startup stories every day. But there's a fundamental reason why startups are so nimble and so agile, and they're able to respond to the change that's happening around us, because they work in a highly converged environment where every single person wears multiple hats, right? It's a very collaborative environment. What's ironical, though, is as you scale, you tend to kill the model that made you successful in the first place.